Imagine you are a crab minding your own business on the seafloor. You have a hard shell, a good, solid calcium carbonate shell that has protected your kind for millions of years. You have claws. You are, by most reasonable measures, not a soft target. And then something about the size of a banana looks at you, cocks back a small appendage, and hits you so fast that the water around the strike vaporises. Not metaphorically vaporises. Actually vaporises. The club moves so quickly that the pressure in the water immediately behind it drops so low that the water changes phase, turning from liquid to vapour in an instant, the same way water boils when pressure drops, not when heat rises. A cavitation bubble forms, and when it collapses, a fraction of a millisecond later, the energy released inside that bubble is extraordinary. A small, flickering pulse of superheated plasma, the fourth state of matter, appears for a fraction of a second, right there in the ocean, produced by the fist of a crustacean. Your shell does not survive this. The mantis shrimp is not, by any stretch of the imagination, what it looks like on paper. On paper, it is a small marine crustacean, averaging around 10 centimeters in length, found in tropical and subtropical waters around the world. On paper, it sounds like background scenery, something you might glance at while snorkeling and think, oh, pretty colours, before swimming on. In reality, it is one of the most physically extraordinary animals on the planet. It has the most complex visual system ever discovered in any living creature. It can strike with the force of a bullet. It has been known to break aquarium glass. And it does all of this with a kind of quiet, self-possessed confidence that, if you spend enough time reading about it, starts to feel almost personal. Today, we are going to take the mantis shrimp seriously. It more than deserves it. Let's start with the strike, because nothing else about this animal makes quite the same impression. The mantis shrimp belongs to a group of crustaceans called stomatopods, and within that group there are two broad categories based on how they hunt. There are spearers, which have spiny appendages for impaling soft-bodied prey like fish and shrimp, and there are smashers, which have a specialized club-shaped appendage called the dactyl club, designed for one purpose and one purpose only, hitting things very, very hard. It is the smashers we are focused on today. The dactyl club of a smasher mantis shrimp, the striking appendage, accelerates at around 10,000 times the force of gravity. It reaches speeds of up to 23 meters per second. That is roughly 80 kilometers per hour. The entire strike, from cocked position to full extension, takes about 3 milliseconds. To put that in perspective, the fastest human punch ever recorded travels at around 11 meters per second. A professional boxer is, in terms of strike speed, roughly half as fast as a 10-centimeter crustacean. But here is the part that elevates the mantis shrimp from impressive to genuinely strange. The strike is so fast and the force so concentrated that it does not just hit the target once, it hits it twice. The first hit is the physical impact of the dactyl club itself. But as the club moves through water at that speed, it creates a region of extremely low pressure immediately behind it. That low pressure causes the water to vaporize instantaneously, forming a bubble, a cavitation bubble. When that bubble collapses, fractions of a millisecond later, it releases a second shockwave. A second impact, almost as powerful as the first, generated entirely by the physics of the water itself. So, the crab gets hit by the club. And then, before it has even registered being hit, it gets hit again by a collapsing bubble of superheated plasma. The temperature reached inside that collapsing cavitation bubble is somewhere around 5,000 degrees Celsius. The surface of the sun is around 5,500 degrees. These numbers are genuinely close enough that the comparison is not hyperbole. It is physics. The surrounding water dissipates this almost instantly. It is not as though the ocean briefly catches fire, but inside that collapsing bubble, for a nanosecond, the conditions are comparable to the surface of a star, and the mantis shrimp does this casually, repeatedly, to get lunch. Now, here is a question worth pausing on. If the mantis shrimp hits things that hard, why does its own arm not shatter? It's a real engineering problem. The forces involved in the strike are enormous. We're talking about accelerations that would destroy most materials, and yet the dactyl club absorbs thousands of these strikes over the course of the animal's life, without failing. How? The answer, which has been studied in considerable detail by materials scientists, is that the dactyl club is one of the most sophisticated impact-resistant structures ever discovered in nature. It has multiple distinct regions, each doing a different structural job. The impact surface, the part that actually makes contact, is made of hydroxyapatite, the same mineral that makes up human bone and teeth, but it is arranged in a rotating helicoidal pattern, meaning the mineral fibers spiral in a helical formation through the material rather than running in a single direction. This arrangement, called a Bulligan structure after the scientist who described it, distributes the energy of an impact in all directions simultaneously, preventing cracks from propagating through the material. Behind the impact surface is a periodic region, layers of fibers arranged in a way that creates a kind of shock-absorbing lattice, further dispersing energy before it can reach the interior of the club. The whole structure is so effective that engineers and materials scientists have been studying it as a model for designing next-generation impact-resistant materials. Helmets, body armor, aircraft panels, and vehicle bumpers. A punch so powerful it generates plasma, delivered by a tool so well-engineered it never breaks. Nature had this figured out long before we did. The Mantis shrimp's dactyl club has been described by researchers as one of the most impact-resistant biological materials ever discovered, which is a sentence that, when you sit with it, feels a little humbling. There is one more piece of the punch that deserves attention because it reveals something remarkable about how evolution solves problems. Muscles, by themselves, cannot produce the speed of the Mantis shrimp's strike. The physics simply do not work. Muscles contract at a rate that is limited by the biology of muscle fiber, and no muscle, in any animal, can contract fast enough to accelerate a limb to 23 meters per second in 3 milliseconds. So how does the mantis shrimp do it? It cheats, in the most elegant way possible. The mantis shrimp uses a biological spring and latch mechanism, what scientists call a power amplification system. The animal contracts its muscles slowly, over a relatively long period, to load energy into a saddle-shaped piece of elastic tissue. This structure stores the energy like a compressed spring. Then, when the latch releases, all of that stored energy is unleashed at once, in a time frame far shorter than any muscle could manage. The same basic principle underlies a crossbow, a catapult, and a mousetrap. You invest energy slowly, store it in an elastic medium, and release it instantaneously. The mantis shrimp evolved this mechanism independently, long before any human engineer thought to build a crossbow. This power amplification principle, where slow muscle energy is converted into ultra-fast mechanical release, has since been found in several other animals. Trapjaw ants, froghoppers, certain species of Venus flytrap. But the mantis shrimp was the animal that brought it to the widest attention, and it remains the most dramatic example of what this mechanism can achieve. The punch that generates plasma is not powered by raw strength. It is powered by a spring. Now we need to talk about the eyes, because the punch is extraordinary. But the visual system of the mantis shrimp might actually be more extraordinary, and it is certainly more conceptually unsettling once you start to think about what it means. Let's start with color vision, because this is where the mantis shrimp becomes almost impossible to place in any familiar frame of reference. Human beings have 3 types of photoreceptor cells in our eyes, cells sensitive to red, green, and blue light. By combining signals from these 3 types, our brains can perceive the full spectrum of visible color. 3 types, and we can see everything from deep violet to rich red, and most of what lies between. The mantis shrimp has 16 types of photoreceptor cells. 16, and here is how they are divided, because the breakdown is revealing. 12 of those 16 are dedicated to color sampling, spanning the spectrum from deep ultraviolet all the way to far red. The remaining 4 are dedicated entirely to detecting polarized light, the orientation of light waves, a separate sensory channel that we will come back to in a moment. So the visual system is doing 2 distinct jobs simultaneously, through 2 distinct sets of specialized hardware. The immediate assumption about those 12 color receptors, and it is a very natural one, is that this means the mantis shrimp can see colors we cannot even imagine, a visual world so rich and detailed that human color perception would look like black and white by comparison. But here is where it gets genuinely interesting. Research published in the journal Science in 2014 tested the color discrimination ability of mantis shrimp and found something unexpected. Despite having 12 color channels to our 3, the mantis shrimp is actually worse at distinguishing between similar colors than humans are. It cannot detect subtle gradations between nearby shades as well as we can. What it does instead is something fundamentally different from what we do with color. Rather than mixing signals from different receptor types to identify a precise hue, which is what human brains do, the mantis shrimp appears to process color more like a barcode reader. Each of its 12 color receptors responds to a specific, narrow band of wavelength. It does not blend them to find intermediate colors. It reads them as discrete, fixed categories. Why? Because speed matters more than nuance. The mantis shrimp's visual system appears to be optimized for instant, reflex speed recognition of specific signals, particularly the color patterns on other mantis shrimp, which are used in communication and threat assessment. Rather than carefully analyzing a spectrum, the mantis shrimp's eyes give it an immediate yes or no answer for each of 12 color channels simultaneously. Recognition, not discrimination. It is less like having a higher resolution screen and more like having 12 different specialized sensors for color, each tuned to its own specific signal, plus 4 dedicated polarization detectors, all reporting directly to the brain in parallel. No animal on Earth that we know of sees the world through more types of photoreceptor, and the way it uses that system is unlike anything else we have found in nature. But the 16 color channels are only one part of what makes the mantis shrimp's visual system so unusual. The eyes themselves are mounted on independent stalks, which can rotate freely and independently of each other. Each eye can move up, down, left, right, and rotate around its own axis. The 2 eyes do not need to look at the same thing at the same time. The mantis shrimp can examine 2 completely different objects simultaneously with the same level of focused attention. Each eye is also divided into 3 distinct regions, giving each eye what is effectively trinocular vision, 3 slightly different angles of view processed within a single eye. This means the mantis shrimp can judge distance and depth with a single eye, without needing to use both eyes together the way humans do for depth perception. Now add the color channels. The mantis shrimp's photoreceptors are not only sensitive across the full range of human visible light, but extend into the ultraviolet and into the near-infrared. It can detect wavelengths that are entirely invisible to us. It can also detect the polarization of light, the orientation of light waves, something almost no other animal in nature can do. Polarized light signals are used by mantis shrimp for private communication, visual signals that are essentially invisible to predators and competitors whose eyes cannot detect polarization. Think about what that means. The mantis shrimp moves through a visual world that contains colors we cannot see, in multiple planes of depth, processed through a single eye, with independent scanning from 2 eyes moving in different directions simultaneously, filtered through 16 color channels and a polarization layer that functions as a private communication network. We do not have the faintest experiential framework for what it is like to be a mantis shrimp looking at the world. Let's zoom out from the physics and the optics for a moment and talk about what the mantis shrimp is actually like as an animal, because this is where it becomes, in a slightly unexpected way, rather endearing. Mantis shrimp are solitary and fiercely territorial. They excavate and occupy burrows in the seafloor or in rock crevices, and they defend these burrows aggressively against any intruder. They are not social animals in the way that many crustaceans are. Each mantis shrimp occupies its own territory, and the burrow is its home, its base of operations, and its most prized possession. When threatened, a mantis shrimp will often stand its ground rather than retreat. It will face an approaching threat directly, raise its dactyl clubs in what can only be described as a fighting stance, and hold the position. Researchers who have worked with mantis shrimp in lab settings have noted that they are remarkably alert and seem to track the movements of humans watching them from outside the tank. They appear, by crustacean standards, to be paying attention. Here is where the mantis shrimp family surprises you in a completely different direction. While the smashers we've been focused on today are largely solitary, and it must be said, not especially romantic, their Spira cousins tell a very different story. Spira species, like Lysiosquilina maculata, the zebra mantis shrimp, are known to form long-term monogamous pair bonds lasting 20 years or more. The pair shares a burrow, takes turns guarding eggs during brooding, and cooperates in defending their territory. For a crustacean, this is extraordinary. The stomatopod family contains, within it, both the most violent puncher in the ocean and one of the most committed long-term partners. The smasher brings the plasma, the spearer brings the stability. They are also among the most colourful animals in the ocean. Different species display wildly different colour patterns: stripes, spots, iridescent sheens, patches of electric blue, green, orange, and red. Given their extraordinary visual system, this makes sense. Their colours are messages, and the recipients of those messages can read 16 colour channels, plus polarization. The visual vocabulary available to a mantis shrimp is so much richer than ours that their appearance to each other is almost certainly nothing like what we see when we look at them. The mantis shrimp has, in recent years, become something of a celebrity in the worlds of materials, science, neuroscience, and bioengineering, and for good reason. The Dactyl Club's Boulagon structure, as mentioned earlier, is now informing the design of impact-resistant composites. Research teams at the University of California, Riverside, and elsewhere have published papers directly applying the club's architecture to the design of helmets, aerospace panels, and body armor. The structure's ability to resist crack propagation under repeated high-energy impact is something that has taken human engineers significant effort to replicate even partially. The visual system has generated its own wave of research interest. The discovery that the mantis shrimp uses a fundamentally different processing strategy from vertebrate color vision, parallel recognition rather than mixed signal comparison, has implications for how we think about visual processing in general, and has inspired new approaches to hyperspectral imaging systems. Satellite sensors, cancer detection cameras, and surveillance systems have all drawn on principles derived from studying mantis shrimp photoreceptors. The power amplification mechanism, the spring and latch system, is being studied by roboticists interested in building small, fast-striking robots for applications in surgery, manufacturing, and search and rescue. A robot that can deliver a precise, extremely fast mechanical strike without requiring a massive motor is useful in many contexts. The mantis shrimp solved that engineering problem millions of years ago. What makes the mantis shrimp unusual, even in a natural world full of remarkable specializations, is that it appears to be extraordinary in so many independent ways simultaneously. The punch and the eyes and the spring mechanism and the structural material of the club, these are not variations on a theme. They are separate, genuinely remarkable solutions to separate problems, all present in the same 10-centimeter animal. Here is what I keep coming back to with the mantis shrimp. It lives on a coral reef or in a burrow in the seafloor, going about its life in one of the most visually complex environments on Earth. It hunts, it defends its home. It finds a partner, in many cases, and stays with them for decades. It sees a version of the world that is, in a very literal sense, richer and more information-dense than anything human eyes can access. And it punches things so hard that the water catches fire. It is easy to look at something this small and think the drama is the point, that the cavitation plasma and the 16 photoreceptors are just interesting facts, trivia for a pub quiz or a social media post. But I think the mantis shrimp is actually a useful reminder of something bigger. We have explored less than a third of the ocean. We have formally catalogued only a fraction of the species alive on Earth right now, and in that fraction, we have already found an animal with a better punch than anything we can engineer, eyes that work on principles we are still reverse engineering, structural materials we are still trying to replicate, and a visual experience of the world that we genuinely cannot imagine. What else is out there? The mantis shrimp did not wait to be discovered to be extraordinary. It has been doing all of this, the plasma, the vision, the 20-year partnerships in a burrow on the seafloor, for somewhere around 400 million years, long before there was anyone around to be impressed by it. That, to me, is the most remarkable thing about it.